We are officially live, Michelle. We're live, not only uh, come on, Facebook, give me this thing. We're live on, looks like we're live on TikTok, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook. Come on, there we go. Now we're live on
All right.
Facebook, and for the first time, we are live. We are live on LinkedIn for the first time.
Oh, looky
Michelle,
there.
I credit you for this
I
actually
must be the good
working
luck
this
charm.
time.
Yes, I'll
Thank
take
you.
the
Thank
credit.
you for being here. This is Lessons from Learning Leaders Live. I'm Dwayne Lester, of course, and joining us today is Michelle Cummings. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Now, I want to tell you, last year, and I think I don't know if I mentioned this afterwards, after your training, but if I didn't, I should have, because last year was my 5th year at the Training Magazine Conference and Expo, my 5th year. And I went through, I really have to mute all of these things because I get distracted. I open things and then they're live, and there we go. Okay, I'm focused now. Sorry, I
No
went
worries.
through Sardi Love's Master Facilitator course, which was great, and then I went through the 3 days of the conference. And towards the end of the conference, I was thinking, I'm seeing a lot of the same things that I've seen the years before. I was starting to question, do I come back next year? And then I sat in your session, and my crew that was with me was so impressed and so happy that we went to that. It added so much value to our experience there that I left. I was writing things down. I wanted to go try them. I went and watched your videos on YouTube, and I just wanted to say thank you for everything you did last year, because that added so much to what I did the rest of the year and to what I do today. So
That's
thank you
really
for that.
great to hear. I'm so happy about that, that they provided that much value will actually get you to come back for next year because I'm presenting the continuation of last year's workshop this year at Training Magazine. So yeah, so there'll be more of the same, yet it'll be all different.
I'm
So
looking forward to it. It's
yeah.
on the first day. I've already earmarked it. I've already marked it. I will be there. But
Awesome.
before we get into that, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Michelle Cummings. I own two companies in the training and development fields, I guess, if you will. So Training Wheels is my experiential learning company. Where at Training Wheels, if you're going to learn about me in this 30 minutes, I love a really good metaphor. So I chose the name Training Wheels for my company because I love the metaphor of the training wheel. So if you think about it, in as a training and development specialist, like we're only with a group for a really short period of time
Mhm.
or they have to take what they've learned and really own it. That's exactly what if you used training wheels when you were learning how to ride a bike as a kid, you only use those training wheels for just a little bit of time before you take that training wheel off and then you own it, right? And it
Mhm.
takes a lot of courage and a lot of I mean, you have to make the decision on when you're ready to actually implement it. And so I took that metaphor and kind of put it into my experiential activities that normally I'm only with a group for a really short period of time, and then it's up to them to take what they've learned and then own it. And of course, just as like when you're riding a bike, a little scary when just a little wobbly the first couple times you try it, but eventually it just becomes a skill that you own and you don't even have to think about it anymore. Like I haven't ridden a bike in quite a while, but guess what? I bet you if I got right back on, it would come right back to me. So that's kind of at the work at Training Wheels we do is all around experiential learning. So I have an online games database, an online store that is just chock full of experiential activities that you can then take and use and put them into your own curriculums and we sell the props, we sell the activity ideas. I've authored several books in the team building field, and I keynote and present at least 20 conferences annually now. So that's Training Wheels,
Did you
and then
say 20 conferences annually?
annually.
Wow.
Yes. It's quite a robust travel schedule just for conferences, and then I travel to do workshops and things like that as and actual work with organizations as well. So yeah, I put about 200,000 miles on an airplane every year. So
That's impressive.
one of
So
those
how did
road
you
warriors.
tell me how you even got started in this field?
Yeah, sure. So, an interesting start. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology, and I actually went into adventure therapy working with troubled kids of, first when I first got started, and did that for a few years, and really fell in love with the amazing transformations that I saw in kids when we would do the experiential activities. I found that talk therapy, just sitting in a circle and talking about things, wasn't didn't work all that well. But as soon as we started doing experiential activities where they were engaged in their learning, I saw marked advances in their treatment and in their willingness to actually do something and talk about it and relate it back to the real world. So I fell in love with that, and I wanted to learn more about why that experiential piece was so key in making those market advancements in their therapy. So I then went and got my master's degree in experiential education, and then from there went to work for a few organizations that did part of their clientele. They worked with kids, and then the other part of the programming they did was working with corporate and community work. And so that's when I fell in love. I'm like, oh, grown-ups like to play games and have fun while they're learning as well. So anyway, that's where my love of the two came. And so that's really where I got my start. And then eventually Training Wheels, I've had Training Wheels now. It's 2024 will be my 25th year at Training Wheels when I started it. So it's going to be a big banner year for us. We're going to have all kinds of fun celebrations that we're going to do. But so I worked for a few other organizations to get started, but I started Training Wheels when I was pretty early in my career, and it was right about the time where the internet also was formed.
Right. Right.
So that just those two things went hand in hand. I now had a global reach, whereas before it was very regional reach, and that's really what contributed to a lot of my early success was being one of the first ones on the internet. So
So you said something earlier that I want to go back to. You said, "Wow, adults like to play games too," and it reminded me of something that Bob used to teach. Bob Pike used to teach. He used to say, I think it's one of Pike's rules is adults are just babies in big bodies.
yes,
That
absolutely. I
so
always one of my taglines I say in my trainings are like, grown-ups are just fifth graders trapped in bigger bodies because a lot of the behaviors are the same. And honestly, I do some of the same activities I do with fifth graders that I do with corporate groups, but I just change my language and change the way that the metaphors and things like that. But a lot of the activities are the same, and some of the behaviors are the same as well. But as grown-ups, we just get away with it. Whereas with kids, we reprimand, and with grown-ups, we get away with it.
so do you find that holds true even all the way up to the C-suite? I mean, do you
I
do these kinds of activities with CEOs, CFOs, CO?
100% yes. In fact, especially if it's a program that I'm rolling out more to organization wide, I encourage the C-suite to go through a similar yet elevated program than what everybody else is going through. Because number one, it builds that foundational knowledge base, and so that they can have really similar conversations with one another. It also, from a role modeling point of view, it shows your mid levels or even your emerging leaders or who the other levels of the organization that leadership is not reserved for an elite few, right? It you can be a leader no matter what level of the organization you are. And when you see the C-suite going through the same thing that you're going through, there can be some really good morale building there within the organization when they see. Now, so at Personify Leadership at my other company, I have a mid-level leadership course that I designed that is we teach 8 core competencies of effective leadership. And I do have a mid-level leader, and then I have a C-suite version of it as well. And the C-suite version is just it's a lot of the exact same activities, a lot of same concepts, yet elevated and localized for the C-suite level. Um, so that way it's still applicable to them. Instead of talking about the challenges at the mid level, we talk about the challenges at the of the C-suite level. But
Right.
similar content, similar language that we use, so that way then it can cascade down through the organization.
Have you ever been in a situation where you were working with the C-suite or upper leadership and someone was just a little too reserved, maybe a little too stuffy, and they didn't feel comfortable engaging in something that they saw maybe childish or immature? And how did you handle that?
Yeah, I'm very because I know there's bad team building out there. In fact, Dwayne, the name of the workshop that you went to of mine last year at Training Magazine was called Team Building Activities That Don't Suck.
Mhm.
Right. So um Because there's a lot of bad team building out there, and because a lot of people will show up arms crossed, very close-minded to what it is we're about to do because they have had some poor experiences with team building exercises in the past. So I know that, and I know that anytime I get in front of any group, that's the first thing that I have to deal with is acknowledge that there's bad team building out there, and then also state this is going to be different because everything that I'm going to ask them to do is very intentional by design.
Hmm.
So yeah, there might be some things in there that might stretch them or push them a little bit, and that is intentional because I want them to have those harder conversations. And I think one of the reasons why team building gets a bad rap, why there is bad team building out there, is that sometimes I think that whoever is designing it or facilitating it doesn't communicate the intent. And if you communicate the intent up front with everyone, this is why we're doing what we're doing, then it actually helps alleviate the stuffiness, the closed-mindedness, the this is just a dumb, silly game kind of attitudes, and actually will allow them to explore a little bit. Because if they feel emotionally safe and physically safe, then the human brain, we are natural explorers. And so if I can combat that at the very beginning, if they feel like, oh, I don't want to do this because I'm going to be made to look a fool in front of my colleagues. That's never my intention. If I ask them to do something that pushes them outside their comfort zone, it's because I'm going to actually have a tie-in to what does it look like, feel like when we do step outside our comfort zone, and how does that benefit our organization or our teams?
So that really ties back to the principles of adult learning,
Mhm.
that adults want to know what's in it for them. What are we
Right.
doing this and why are we doing it? And so
Absolutely.
you're saying right up front, saying we're about to go into this activity. This is why we're doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I have a few exercises that really do stretch people, and I sometimes will do them first. Let's get it out of the way, right out of the blocks. But I also do it in a way that, like, all right, raise your hand if that pushed you outside your comfort zone just a little bit, right? I'm like, all right, well, that was really intentional by design. Today, I'm going to invite you I'm going to ask you to do some things that you probably have never done before. And for some of it, it might feel a little awkward. It might feel a little weird, but just know that's intentional by design because we're going to talk about what does it feel like when we go to market with a new product and we don't know if our clientele is really going to embrace what it is we've done. Well, that's a little awkward, and that can feel a little step outside our comfort zone kind of moment. And so if I can tap into that and make you feel it in your bones in the actual leadership training or the team building session that I'm doing with your organization and with your team, then that's the whole point. Like, we've got to surface the behaviors in a way that you're is palpable that's the word I'm looking for, and that you'll feel it in your bones, but then also to debrief it in a way that you understand we did that because I wanted to get to this conversation. How does this what happened, why is this important, and how does this relate back to the real world? That's where the intentionality and flow comes in with good team building over I'm going to ask you to do something really silly just for the sake of silliness to make you look kind of ridiculous in front of your peers. That I don't do that type of team building, but I know that there are other, places that do. Um, so yeah, and I mean, basically, when I'm doing a needs assessment with any organization that wants to bring us out to do training, I really talk about team bonding, team building, and team development. Those are kind of the 3 buckets that I put the types of programs are that are out there. And team bonding is like, when a lot of groups will get together and they'll go do bowling or they'll do a group meal or they'll do something like that. And there is so much value in team bonding, but that's not really what I do. I don't do competitive, like, team Olympic kind of things, like, and there are organizations out there that do that, and there's some value in those. That's just not what I do. When I get to team building and team development, the difference in those are team building is actually it's structured, it's sequenced with intentionality by facilitators that actually will connect what happened back to the real world, and it can stand act as a standalone event. You can do a team building event, but the difference between team bonding and team building is that it is facilitated versus or of the intent of team bonding is just to kind of hang out and get to know one another and have a good time, but not with a lot of connection back to the real world.
So it sounds like what you're saying is in order for your team building not to suck, you need to let people know up front, this is what we're going to do and this is why we're doing it. Then you need to structure that activity towards that goal
Mhm.
and then connect it to the real world.
Absolutely. Yes. That's what in my mind, that's what differentiates team bonding and team building. And then team development takes the to the whole nother level to where then it's like ongoing, consistent. You can actually work towards organizational or behavior change if you're really working towards something. And that could be one program a month or one program a week. I mean, depending on budget and scope and scalability and number of people and all that. But and team development would likely include like some behavioral assessments and you'd be working really closely with the HR department and things like that to where um, you're really working towards organizational or behavioral awareness or change in your team rather than team building can be just a single thing that you do, but again done with intentionality rather than just, hanging out and getting to know one another better.
Tell me how you feel about the difference between a facilitator who tells them the lesson and
Mhm.
a facilitator who lets them discover it.
Ugh. Self-discovery and self-awareness are really amazing things. When you let others discover the learning on their own, I don't know. I don't know about you, but if you think about like you learn, if you think about all the lessons that you've learned along the way, a lot of those you had to learn experientially. Right, whether it be like, "Oh, I shouldn't speed in that, one zone because I got a speeding ticket." Like, that was an experiential lesson that you might not, make again. Versus like or whenever somebody asks me, I'm like, "Hey, if you could tell a new person, a new facilitator, here's what I wish I would have learned when I was first getting started in experiential learning," or something like that. I have a couple programmed natural responses or answers that I give to that question, but at the same time, some of those lessons you want people to learn experientially. And sometimes they might hear it, but they're not necessarily going to apply it until they do actually hear it and or experience it. And then they'll be like, oh, yeah, okay. Now I see what she means. Um, but for me, so I've been facilitating for over 30 years now. And I know early in my facilitation career, it was like I had the answers. You kind of want to be that person that like, here's what you're gonna learn
Mhm.
and share it with them. But now that I'm 30 years in, I'm like, man, the ahas and the light bulb moments that you see in people when they figure it out on their own are priceless. So for me, I like to make sure that I'm asking all the right questions to where you can get to that self discovery. And I can kind of steer people a little bit towards a specific learning outcome if I want to. But I would much rather have someone discover their learning on their own rather than me, here's what you're going to learn today type of thing.
And often, has it been your experience that when you allow that to happen, they will bring more to the training than you ever could because they're seeing things that you never even knew about.
Absolutely.
They may highlight things that you didn't even know were a problem. Maybe they didn't even know that were a problem, but they're able to bring those out, and then the rest of the room is like, "Oh, wow, we hadn't thought of
Absolutely.
that."
Yeah, I mean, at Personify Leadership, so it's a 2-day leadership course where we teach 8 core competencies of effective leadership, and each one of those 8 competencies we teach through a module, and every module starts out with some experiential activity that surfaces the behavior that we're about to go in the classroom and then teach skills in. And I've been teaching this class now for 11 years. And every once in a while, I still get participants that will say or do something that has never happened in the 11 years I've been teaching this class. And I love that. That means I'm still asking questions that are open ended enough and people are making their own connections rather than me being the one telling them. Now, granted, I've got learning outcomes for each one of those modules. You're going to learn these 3 skills. So I'm still targeting or I guess directing them down a specific path. But at the same time, they're still the ones making those personal connections and applying what the experience to their own personal leadership journey. And I just just love that so much. The opportunities for discovery and self-awareness are really, really rich. So
It's you get kind of a thrill out of that, don't you? Where
you
you're like,
do,
oh,
absolutely.
something new is happening. What's gonna
Right.
happen next?" And you can't really wait to see how this, moves forward and what you might learn,
Mhm.
honestly.
Mhm.
So since this year's session, you said is kind of building on last year's. Tell me a little bit about last year's, and then the differences that I'll see because I will definitely be there, that
Yeah.
I'll see this year.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like the last year I brought, I also didn't realize it was going to be quite so popular. The room actually, like, we had to actually close the door and to where no
Mhm.
more people could come in. And I think the title was really something that just caught people's eye because I presented there the year before and I had like 30 or so people come to that workshop. So I was kind of anticipating similar numbers. Maybe it'd grow a little bit, but I had over 220. I think the room was capped at 225 people, and they had to close the door and turn people away. So I will definitely bring more gear, so that everybody can participate in all the activities at one time. And so there'll still be some tabletop, some good activities that you can do seated at rounds or seated at tables. For me, in my mind, I like doing experiential activities where you have between 6 to 12 people around whatever the props are of the activity that you're doing. And for me, I like that number, just because I think it is, if you get too much bigger than that, it's easy for people to get real quiet and let other people kind of do the work and not have quite the same level of engagement. So the fewer number of people in a group, I actually like that. So they
Agreed.
so everybody feels equally engaged in those exercises. So it'll be similar to, and then I actually did a couple of really large group ones. If you remember my large group, all 220 people doing my version of Simon Says. Do you
Loved it.
remember? Yeah, it
Loved
was
it.
so great. So I have a colleague of mine that actually was the one that came up with the new rules for Simon Says. His name is Scott Gerst, and he was the mastermind behind creating the new rules to Simon Says. And if you are listening to this, you can go watch. I have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel that actually highlight this new version of Simon Says. And
I'll
it,
put the link to that video in the Substack,
yeah, okay,
and in
great.
the notes because
Yeah.
it's a great video.
Yeah. So there's a video of me actually leading it with about a couple hundred people in on YouTube, and then there's one of me teaching it. Like here, Simon Says is a teaching tool, how to change it just a little bit to where it's not an elimination game anymore. To where then it's actually, because if we think about the metaphor, don't we try to teach people that if you make a mistake, try to learn from it, and then try not to make the same mistake again. Well, the old version of Simon Says doesn't allow for that, right? Like as soon as you make a mistake, then you're out, right? And then the walk of shame starts and then you have to leave the game, right? Um so anyway, so a few rule tweaks to it. It's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite, and it's so engaging. It's one of my go-to at my keynotes because it's and it's just fun when you get that many adults all playing and learning together and then really starting to develop strategies for success for yourself and around accountability. Oh, there's so much good stuff in it. So this year I'll bring more different activities that again are kind of tabletop, some small group engaging activities, and then some other, I've got some other ones that are large group, louder, more energizing kind of exercises as well. And again, all of them with the intent that each experiential activity that we do, it surfaces a specific behavior that then will go into, um, when we debrief it, we'll talk about what happened, why is that important, and then how does that relate to the real world? What is the behavior or the skill that we tried to teach or surface through the experiential activity that then applies back to the real world? And that's where, a lot of people that go to Training Magazine are, they're your HR professionals, they're your curriculum designers, they're instructional designers that are looking for those things to make training more engaging, to where it's not death by PowerPoint. It's not like go and sit and do and just listen, because engaging the adult brain, you've got to keep people doing something different or engage the brain differently, about every 15 minutes, so that you keep them engaged rather than have them be really bored and disengaged because it's death by PowerPoint. So
So we've got a few minutes left here. I had a colleague call me recently and say, Dwayne, how do you come up with your training activities? And what I said was, well, honestly, I just took something that I saw and just changed it a little bit and applied it to what we were doing. And it sounds like that's what's going on with Simon Says. Like you saw this game and you said, okay, well, let's change this a little bit. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about the process that you go through, if you have one, on coming up with team building
Yeah,
activities.
that's a great question. I'm designing a new course around effective delegation right now at Personify, and I'm designing this exercise called "Delegate What's on Your Plate." So if you think about it, that's what we talk about. We talk about that metaphor all the time. So delegate. So what's on your plate right now? Well, so I'm like, well, okay, well, I'm just going to take that metaphor and infuse it into an actual experiential activity. So I have a plate, and I have people list out what are your low value time tasks and your high value time tasks, and have them assign weight to some specific tasks that they've got on their plate right now, or on their calendar, on their and then I have this plate that has a bunch of trinkets on it. And then they literally have to then go and try to effectively delegate their low value tasks off their plate. And some people say no. They're like, no, I can't take that on, because they've got their own plate of things that they're trying to get rid of, and not necessarily trying to add things to their plate, but they're trying to get rid of things. And what do you do as a leader when you have people that actually say no to your requests? Like, hey, I need you to help me on this. And they're like, no, I don't have bandwidth for that. Well, so
Well,
how do
and
you, right?
that is such a great experience because how many people have trouble saying no?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
they're like they're yes, I'll do that. Yes, I'll do that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
just
And then they
that
get bogged
physical.
down, and then they're overwhelmed, and then they're stressed, and then they start to drop the ball on other things because they've said yes to too many things. And so yeah, so I'm still fine tuning and tweaking it, but it is so for me, I think about what is it that I want people to learn? Like what's the behavior that I'm surfacing in the activity that then I'm going to go in the classroom and teach skills on. And so for me, then I've got to design the activity to where they feel that in their bones. They experience that through the exercise, whether it's frustration, whether it's confusion a little bit, whether it's something like that. And then and then they after they experience it, then to debrief the experiential activity, and we'll talk about, well, what happened? Were you able to delegate all of your low value tasks? Well, no, I wasn't. Well, why? Why weren't you? There were people that were unreceptive. They said no. Or some are like, yeah, I actually was. I was able to get rid of a lot of my low value tasks because for somebody else it was one of their high value tasks. And they said, yeah, I could take that. Um, how does that relate back to the real world? So those three questions are the sequence of all of effective debriefing of any experiential activities. What happened in the exercise? Why is that important? Or um, what is the point, basically? And then how do you relate that back to the real world? That right there is the formula for effectively debriefing experiential activities to where you're communicating the intent. I've surfaced the behavior because of this reason, because I want to apply it back to the real world and then to go teach skills in it. So
So you kind of agitate
a
and then
little
you
bit,
say, what happened? Why is that important? And how does that relate to the real world?
correct. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
That's
And I call
fantastic. So
it's
we
the
got
what, so what, now what model. And I didn't create that. That's the Kolb model. The what, so what, now what. And then I kind of changed the what, so what, now what is model is catchy, but I feel like if I change the language a little bit to the what happened, why is this important, and how do we use this in the real world? The what, why, how, it's still what, so what, now what, but just using a little bit different words that I think make a little bit more mainstream sense than what, so what, now what.
so we've got less than a minute left. Where can everyone find you and what you do and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so at Training Wheels, it's training-wheels.com. Don't forget the dash. You get a very different website. And there you can sign up for my free newsletter. It goes out once a week on Wednesdays. It's Wheel of a Deal Wednesday. It's called The Spokesperson. You can see I love it. I'm the big wheel at Training Wheels. Like I love a good metaphor, right? So So feel free to sign up for that. It goes out to 23,000 people in over 100 countries now. And so a really robust community of facilitators there. And then at Personify Leadership, if you're interested in learning about that, it's just personifyleadership.com. And that is a train the trainer course where you can become certified to deliver that course. So a little bit different. Training Wheels is here's a bunch of activities. Go ahead and put them into your curriculum and do what you want with the activities. Whereas at Personify, it's more of a curriculum based course that you can become certified to deliver that specific course out to your either internally at your organization, or if you're a consultant, you can facilitate it out to your client base.
How about social media? You on
Yeah,
Facebook?
we're on Facebook. Both pages have Facebook pages. Where I'm on LinkedIn. Both companies have company pages on LinkedIn. We're also on Twitter. So yeah, those are the main ones that you can find us on.
Outstanding. Well, once again, I want to thank you not only for taking the time to join me today and talk about this, but for the great work you did last year and the great work I'm sure you're going to do this year. I can't wait to see what you bring this year. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see you then.
Thanks, Dwayne. Thanks for having me, and we'll see you in February.